Welcome to Connected Through Change. Men supporting menopause, two voices, one journey. Your host is Russell Betts, author of the international best-selling book, The Good Husband's Guide to Menopause, and founder of the Connected Through Change movement. Each week, you'll hear both the men's and women's perspectives, so you can understand what's really happening beneath the surface and learn how to stay steady, supportive, and connected through one of life's biggest transitions. If you want clarity, confidence, and a stronger relationship during menopause and beyond, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Welcome back, everyone. It feels like just yesterday we were diving into that initial conversation about nonverbal communication. Last time, we touched on how sometimes the words we don't say speak louder than the ones we do. But today, I want to shift gears a little and talk about something equally important, moving from speechlessness to precision. Now I know that sounds a bit formal, but what I really mean is, how can we get better at expressing ourselves during this huge transition called menopause? It's such an emotional roller coaster for so many couples. You know, I remember when my wife started experiencing changes, I felt so overwhelmed sometimes. I had all these thoughts racing in my head, but when it came to actually saying something, I just froze. It's like I wanted to be supportive, to be there for her, to articulate how I was feeling and how to help her, but instead, I often just said nothing, which was even worse, I think. Have you ever had a moment like that, where the words just escape you? You are standing in the hallway, or maybe you're leaning against the kitchen counter, watching the steam rise off a cup of tea. He says something ordinary, something light, and you feel that familiar surge in your chest. Not anger, exactly. It's a vast, complicated landscape of realization about how much you are changing, how much the ground beneath your feet has shifted in this middle season of your life. You open your mouth to try and put words to the scale of it, to the cathedral-sized transformation happening inside you. You search for a sentence, you look at him, and then you feel the familiar lock in your throat. You realize the sheer manual labor required to translate all of that into a linear sentence is simply too high. So, you swallow it. You look down at your tea and you say, "Never mind. It's nothing." If you've been living in that silence, I want you to know something. You are not failing. The fact that you, someone who is articulate, capable, and clear in every other area of your life, find yourself speechless in your own relationship is not a character flaw. It's a signal that what you're carrying has become larger than the language you've been using to describe it. You aren't broken. You are trying to explain a complex internal reality using tools that were never designed for this kind of weight. You've been trying to build a bridge across a widening gap with materials that can no longer support the load. And that is exhausting. What you're experiencing is real. And it's more common than you think. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about what I call the never mind tax. That silent withdrawal that happens when the cost of explaining yourself becomes too high. We've talked about the ghost in the room, the unnamed reality sitting quietly at the table, the thing both people can feel but neither person quite knows how to describe. And perhaps you've begun noticing how often these moments show up. The conversation that never happens, the feeling that never gets named, the truth that stays trapped inside because the effort required to explain it feels overwhelming. But today, I want to move from naming the problem to exploring a different way forward. Because eventually we reach a point where insight alone isn't enough. Eventually we need language Think about what happens when you're driving through unfamiliar territory. You know you're somewhere. You know you're moving. You know the landscape has changed. But without a map, every turn feels uncertain. Every decision feels heavier than it should. Many relationships experience something similar. You know something has changed. You know the old conversations aren't working the way they used to. You know you're feeling more distant, more exhausted, or more alone than before. But you can't quite locate where the disconnect is happening. And when we can't locate the problem, we usually start blaming ourselves, or our partner, or the relationship itself. But what if the issue isn't that anyone is failing? What if the issue is that nobody has a map? One of the most powerful shifts we can make is moving from personal frustration to shared observation. Instead of saying, "You don't understand me," or "You never listen," or "Nothing ever changes," the conversation becomes, "I think we're running into the same challenge over and over again, and I'm starting to see it differently." Do you hear the difference? One conversation creates defense, the other creates curiosity. One asks another person to decode your internal world, the other invites them to explore it with you. Maybe the issue isn't the dishes, maybe it isn't the schedule, maybe it isn't even the specific argument. Maybe what you're actually experiencing is a growing gap between the life you're living and the language available to describe it. And when that gap grows large enough, silence begins to feel safer than speaking. That's when the never mind tax appears. Not because you don't care, not because the relationship doesn't matter, but because carrying the burden of translation by yourself becomes exhausting. This is why clarity matters. Not because clarity solves everything, but because clarity gives us coordinates. It helps us move from "I know something is wrong" to "I can finally see what I've been experiencing." And once something can be seen, it can be discussed. Once it can be discussed, it can be understood. And once it can be understood, it can begin to change. So, what does this look like in real life? It looks like stepping out of the role of translator. Instead of trying to explain your entire internal world in one conversation, you simply name the existence of the gap. You might say, "I'm noticing something changing in me, and I'm still trying to find language for it." Or, "I don't think this is really about the schedule. I think there's something deeper happening, and I'm beginning to see it." Or even, "I want to talk about something important, but I don't quite have the words yet." Notice how different that feels. You're no longer trying to carry the entire bridge on your shoulders. You're simply acknowledging that the bridge needs attention. That alone can change the emotional climate of a conversation. The goal isn't perfect communication. The goal is shared understanding. And shared understanding almost always begins with language. This week, I want to invite you to take one simple step. Set aside about 12 minutes. Find a quiet place and take the Connected Through Change assessment. Not for your partner, not to prepare for a difficult conversation, not to figure out who's right or wrong. Do it for yourself. Do it as an act of recognition. Sometimes what we need most isn't advice. It's language. The assessment is designed to help you identify patterns and experiences that may have been difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. You'll find a link in the show notes. When you're finished, don't rush to share the results. Don't feel pressure to explain them. Simply notice what it feels like to see pieces of your experience reflected back to you in words. The first step toward being understood isn't always speaking. Sometimes it's finally understanding yourself. And perhaps the next time you feel the urge to say, "Never mind," you'll have something different available. Not a perfect explanation, not a breakthrough conversation, just a little more clarity, a little more language, a little more understanding of what you've been carrying. And for now, that's enough. You don't have to build the whole bridge tonight. You only need the next coordinate. Clarity is the beginning. Integration is the becoming.
Thanks for joining us on Connected Through Change. Remember, it takes two voices to walk one journey, and you don't have to navigate this alone. To go deeper, grab Russell's international best-selling book, The Good Husband's Guide to Menopause. Explore the weekly blog or take the Communication Clarity Assessment at connectedthroughchange.com. Stay steady, stay connected, and I'll see you in the next episode.